They cuffed me on my own land because an HOA said I didn't belong. I was face down in the dirt, cuffs biting into my wrists, while the HOA president told the sheriff she owned my land. For a minute, even he believed her. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules anymore. It was about control. And while she kept pushing harder, I stopped talking and started building something she couldn't see coming. If you've ever dealt with people who think they own more than they do, stick with me. And if you want more stories like this, go ahead and subscribe. The first thing I remember was the taste of dust. It filled my mouth the second my cheek hit the ground. Dry, bitter, mixed with the faint oil smell from my own driveway. Gravel pressed into my skin as a knee drove into my back, pinning me there like I was something dangerous. Don't move.
Do not move.
The deputy's voice was sharp, controlled, not angry. Worse than that, certain. My hands were yanked behind me, metal biting into my wrists. The cuffs snapped tight, louder than I expected. Final, like a gate slamming shut. I didn't resist, didn't need to. I knew exactly where I was. My land, my ranch. And somehow, I was the one face down in it. Red and blue lights washed over everything. The fence line, the old wooden gate my father built, the hood of my truck parked 20 feet away. The beams cut through the dark like searchlights, turning familiar ground into something cold and unrecognizable. 3 patrol cars, maybe 4. Engines idling, diesel fumes drifting low, mixing with the dry earth and the faint scent of hay from the barn behind me. I turned my head just enough to see the house. The window was lit, and behind it, pressed up against the glass, was Lily. Her small hands flat against the pane, her face pale in the light. 10 years old, watching her father get treated like a criminal on the front yard she used to chase fireflies on. That hit harder than the cuffs. Dad. I couldn't hear her through the glass, but I saw it in the shape of her mouth. The deputy shifted his weight, pressing me down again. Sir, I said, don't move. I'm not, I said, my voice coming out rough from the dust. I live here. You can explain that in a minute. A second set of boots stepped into view. Clean, polished, not law enforcement. I didn't have to look up to know who it was. Carol Whitmore. Officers, she said, her voice smooth, controlled, carrying just enough urgency to sound believable. That's him. I rolled my head enough to see her. She stood just beyond the edge of the headlights, perfectly composed. Dark blazer, hair set like she was about to walk into a listing appointment instead of a midnight police call. Not a strand out of place. She wasn't shaken. She wasn't surprised. She was prepared. That's the individual I reported, she continued, holding a folder tight against her side. He's been illegally occupying HOA-controlled property for months. Illegally occupying. I almost laughed. The sheriff stepped closer then. Sheriff Cole Bennett. I knew him. Not well, but enough. Small county. You recognize faces. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at her. Ma'am, he said, calm, measured. You're saying this man does not have legal right to be here? That's exactly what I'm saying. She didn't hesitate. This property was foreclosed under HOA authority. We have documentation. He's refused to vacate despite formal notice. Foreclosed. My jaw tightened against the gravel. That word didn't belong here. Not on this land. Sir, the sheriff said, finally turning toward me. You're Ethan Walker? That's right. And you're claiming ownership of this property? I'm not claiming it, I said. I own it. Carol let out a soft breath. Not quite a laugh. Close enough. That's what he's been telling everyone, she said. But we've already verified the status through proper channels. Proper channels. I watched her shift the folder in her hands, just slightly, like she wanted him to notice it. And he did. Do you have those documents with you? The sheriff asked. Of course. She stepped forward, heels crunching lightly against the gravel. I brought everything. Foreclosure notice, lien records, enforcement authorization. She opened the folder and handed him a stack of papers. Clean, organized, official looking. From where I was, I could see the edges. Printed headers, seals, signatures. Enough to look real under flashing lights at 11 at night. The sheriff took them, flipping through slowly. His face didn't change much, but I saw it. The hesitation. That split second where things weren't lining up clean, but not wrong enough to dismiss. Behind him, one of the deputies shifted. Sir, if there's a valid foreclosure. I see that, Bennett said quietly, still reading. I stared at the dirt in front of me. My dirt. Every inch of it paid for, inherited, recorded, protected. My father's name still on half the original documents sitting in a drawer inside that house. And somehow, I was still on the ground. Ethan, the sheriff said after a moment, do you have any documentation of ownership inside the residence? I let out a slow breath. Yeah, I said. Kitchen drawer. Same place it's been for 20 years. He nodded once. We'll verify that. Carol stepped in again, just enough to keep control. Sheriff, with respect, we've already confirmed this through HOA legal review. The foreclosure process. I understand, ma'am, Bennett cut in, still calm. But I need to verify independently. That was the first crack. Small, but real. Carol's smile didn't disappear, but it tightened. I just don't want this situation escalating unnecessarily, she said. He's been non-compliant for months. We've issued multiple notices. At some point, enforcement has to mean something. Enforcement. Like she owned the word, the deputy behind me eased the pressure slightly, but didn't remove the cuffs. Procedure. Still not on my side. I turned my head again, looking back at the house. Lily hadn't moved, still at the window, still watching. That did something to me. Something quiet. Something steady. The anger didn't explode. It settled. Hardened. Because none of this was random. Not the calls, not the timing, not the paperwork. Carol Whitmore didn't make moves unless she thought she'd already won. Which meant whatever she handed that sheriff was convincing enough to almost make it true. I shifted my wrists slightly against the cuffs, feeling the metal press deeper. Sheriff, I said, my voice steady now, you might want to look real close at whatever she gave you. He glanced down at the papers again, then back at me. Why's that? I met his eyes. Because if those are what I think they are. I paused. Let it hang there. Then someone just filed paperwork on land they don't own. The night went quiet for a second. Even the engines seemed lower. Behind him, one of the deputies stopped moving entirely. Carol didn't speak. But I saw it. Just for a second. That flicker. Not fear. Not yet. Something closer to irritation, like I wasn't reacting the way she expected. The sheriff looked down at the documents again, slower this time, more careful, and for the first time since I hit the ground, he wasn't sure who he was looking at. Sheriff Bennett closed the folder halfway, not handing it back to Carol yet. That alone shifted the air. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The kind of pause that tells everyone something isn't clean. All right, he said finally. We're going to sort this out properly. He motioned to the deputy behind me. Get him up. The pressure lifted off my back. The cuffs stayed, but I was hauled to my feet, dust falling off my jacket in dry clouds. My shoulders ached from the angle, but I didn't react. I kept my eyes on Carol. She didn't look at me. She watched the sheriff, always the person with authority. That won't be necessary, she said smoothly. We've already done the due diligence. The HOA has legal standing. I said we're going to sort it out. Bennett repeated, sharper this time. That was crack number 2. Small, but real. He handed the folder back to her without breaking eye contact. You mind if we take a look at his documents inside? Carol hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. Then she smiled again. Of course, I have nothing to hide. That was the moment I knew. She didn't believe I had anything that could beat what she brought. Deputy, Bennett said, uncuff him. The metal came off my wrists with a dull click. Blood rushed back into my hands, pins and needles lighting up my fingers. I flexed them once, slow, controlled. No sudden moves, no emotion. That's how you win these moments. I walked ahead of them toward the house, boots crunching on gravel that suddenly felt heavier under every step. The porch light cast a steady yellow glow across the boards, familiar in a way that grounded me. This was still mine, no matter what paper said. I opened the door. Lily was right there. She didn't speak, just looked up at me, eyes wide, searching my face for something I hadn't had time to give her yet. It's all right, I said quietly. Go to your room for a minute. She didn't move. Lily, that did it. She nodded once and slipped past me down the hallway, small footsteps fading across the wood floor. The sheriff stepped inside behind me, followed by one deputy. Carol stayed near the doorway, like she didn't want to step too far into something she didn't fully control. Where are the documents? Bennett asked. Kitchen, I said. Same drawer. Same place they'd been since my father put them there. I crossed the room, pulled it open, and took out the folder. It wasn't fancy. No polished tabs or printed seals, just worn edges, paper that had been handled for years, and the kind of weight that comes from being real. I set it on the table. Start there, I said. Bennett stepped forward, flipping it open. Deed first, always the deed. I watched his eyes track across the lines. Parcel number, boundary description, recorded date. Then the line that mattered. His brow shifted slightly. What is it? The deputy asked. Bennett didn't answer right away. He read it again, slower. Then he looked up at Carol. This property, he said, tapping the page lightly, is listed as an independent parcel with no covenant inclusion. Carol didn't move. That's not accurate, she said. The development expanded. Covenants apply to all surrounding properties now. I leaned against the counter, arms folded. That's not how property law works. She ignored me. It was a developer oversight, she continued, directing everything at the sheriff. We've corrected that internally. Our legal team. You can't correct a recorded deed internally, Bennett cut in. That was crack number 3. This one louder. Carol's smile thinned. Sheriff, with respect, HOAs operate under a different... No, he said. They don't. Silence. Not loud, but heavy. I stepped forward just enough to place my finger on the page. Look at the recording date, I said. 1998. Before the subdivision existed. Before any of your covenants were filled. Bennett glanced down again. Your father owned this? He asked. My father owned it. I inherited it. It's never been part of the HOA. Not once. Carol exhaled through her nose. Controlled but tighter now. We have lien records, she said. Multiple violations. Unpaid fines. That establishes enforcement authority. No, I said again. That establishes you sending letters. The deputy shifted slightly, looking between us. Bennett closed the folder halfway. Ma'am, he said, filing fines against a property that isn't under your association doesn't create legal authority. It creates paper. Carol took a step inside now. For months, she said, voice sharpening, he's ignored community standards. He runs equipment, leaves vehicles exposed, refuses inspections, because I don't answer to you. That landed harder than I expected. Not loud, just final. The sheriff looked at both of us, then at the deed, then back at her. Do you have any documentation, he asked, slow and deliberate, showing this parcel was legally annexed into your HOA? Carol didn't answer immediately. She opened her folder again, flipping pages faster this time. The confidence was still there, but it wasn't as clean anymore. I have enforcement records, she said. That's not what I asked. She stopped flipping. For the first time since she stepped out of that Lexus, she didn't have something ready. I watched it happen. The shift, not in her posture, in the space around her. Authority doesn't disappear all at once. It leaks. And right now it was leaking fast. Bennett straightened slightly. All right, he said. Here's where we're at. He gestured toward me. He has a recorded deed showing independent ownership. Then toward her. You have enforcement documents that don't establish jurisdiction. He paused, then delivered it clean. That's not enough for a trespassing charge. The words hung there. Simple. Legal. Final. Carol's jaw tightened. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. Bennett didn't respond. Instead, he turned to me. Mr. Walker, I'm going to remove you from this situation for now. No charges. But I'd strongly recommend you speak with an attorney. I already planned to. He nodded once, then looked back at Carol. And ma'am, he added, I'd recommend the same. She didn't answer. Didn't argue. Didn't push. She just stood there, holding that folder a little tighter than before. The deputies stepped back toward the door. Bennett followed, pausing just long enough to give the room one last look. Then they were gone. Engines started outside. Lights faded off the walls. And just like that, the house was quiet again. Carol didn't leave immediately. She stood in the doorway, half in shadow, half in the porch light. Then she looked at me. Really looked this time. No smile, no performance. Just calculation. This isn't over, she said. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. She nodded once, like she'd confirmed something in her own head, then turned and walked out to her car. The engine started. Gravel shifted. And she was gone. I stood there for a second, listening to the silence settle back into the house. Then I walked down the hallway. Lily was sitting on her bed, knees pulled in, waiting. They were wrong, I said. She studied my face. You sure? I nodded. Yeah. She relaxed just a little. Not all the way. Just enough. That's when I realized something. This wasn't about a misunderstanding, or a bad night, or paperwork confusion. Carol Whitmore had walked onto my land with documents she expected to win, which meant she either didn't understand the law or she thought she could bend it. And people like that don't stop when they get corrected. They escalate. I looked back toward the front door, where the last of the dust was still settling in the porch light. 6 months ago, this place had been quiet. Simple. Mine. Now, Someone had decided it wasn't enough that I stayed outside their system. They wanted the land too, and tonight proved one thing. They were willing to use whatever it took to get it. The question wasn't whether they'd come back. The question was what they'd try next. I didn't have to wait long to find out. The first thing showed up 2 days later. An orange sticker slapped across the driver's side of my truck. Not tucked in the corner, not subtle. Right across the glass, big enough to block half the windshield. The kind of adhesive that doesn't peel. It fights you. Violation notice. Bold, red, loud. I stood there in the driveway, staring at it while the engine ticked from the cold. No official seal, no county stamp, just HOA branding and a printed list underneath. Unapproved vehicle presence, non-compliant exterior conditions, failure to respond to prior enforcement. I ran my thumb across the edge. Cheap material, printed in bulk, not legal, but designed to look like it was. Lily stood on the porch behind me. "Is that from the police?" she asked. "No," I said, keeping my voice even. "It's not." She stepped closer, squinting at the sticker. "Are we in trouble?" I peeled one corner up slowly. It stretched instead of lifting, tearing into thin strips that left behind glue and paper fibers. "No," I said again. "We're not." But I didn't throw it away. I folded what I could salvage and took it inside. Evidence. That was the shift. 2 nights ago, I was defending. Now I was documenting. By the end of the week, there were 3 more. Mailbox, fence post, barn door, all the same format, all the same tone. Authority without actual authority. And then the letters started. White envelopes, clean, typed. Final notice of non-compliance. Escalation to enforcement review. Potential lien action pending. Each one more aggressive than the last. Each one still missing the only thing that mattered. Jurisdiction. I lined them up on the kitchen table, next to the deed. Real paper next to fake pressure. It would have been easy to ignore. That's what they expected. But ignoring it wasn't the same as stopping it. The first official complaint hit on a Tuesday morning. County Code Enforcement. "Mr. Walker," the voice said over the phone, "we've received a report regarding unpermitted electrical work on your property." I leaned back in the chair, looking out toward the fence line. "No, you haven't," I said. "Sir, I assure you—" "No," I repeated. "You've received a complaint. You haven't received a valid report." There was a pause. "Either way," the voice continued. "Careful now. We're required to inspect." "Then come inspect," I said. Inspector showed up the next day. Doug Simmons, mid-50s, worn boots. The kind of guy who'd rather be anywhere else than stuck in the middle of someone else's fight. He walked the property slow, checked the barn, looked at the breaker panel, took notes. Didn't say much. When he finished, he closed his clipboard and let out a quiet breath. "Everything checks out," he said. "Permits are current. Works clean." "I know." He nodded. Then he lowered his voice slightly. "Off the record," he added, "we've been getting a few of these from your neighborhood." "Few?" "More than usual. Same name attached to most of them." I didn't ask who. Didn't need to. "Anything I can do about it?" I asked. Doug shrugged. "Document it. If it turns into a pattern, it stops being complaints and starts being harassment." Pattern. That word stuck. By Friday, I had one. 5 violation notices. 4 letters. 1 false code complaint. All tied to the same source. All within a week. That wasn't random. That was strategy. It escalated again the following morning. I came out to the gate and found it chained, not locked by the county, not marked for construction. Just a heavy steel chain looped through the wood and secured with a padlock that didn't belong there. My gate, my property, blocked from the outside. I stood there for a second, looking at it, testing the weight. Whoever put it there knew exactly what they were doing. It wasn't about stopping me. It was about sending a message. You don't control access anymore. I walked back to the truck, grabbed bolt cutters, and came back. One clean cut. Metal snapped. Chain dropped. I didn't throw it away. I put it in the bed of the truck. Evidence. That afternoon, I drove into town. Feed store first. Same place I'd been going for years. Same counter. Same faces. But something was off. Conversations cut short when I walked in. Eyes shifted away just a little too fast. One guy gave me a nod. Didn't say anything. I grabbed what I needed and headed to the register. Busy week? The clerk asked. I looked at him. He hesitated. Just heard things, he added. What kind of things? He glanced toward the window, like someone might be listening. HOA's been saying you're not supposed to be out there anymore, he said quietly. Something about foreclosure. I let that sit for a second. Did they say who foreclosed? He shook his head. No, just that it happened. I paid, took my receipt, and walked out. Rumors. That was the next layer. Not legal, not official, but effective. Because people don't check records. They repeat what sounds official. When I got back to the ranch, there was another envelope waiting. This one thicker, more formal. Notice of intent to file lien. I opened it at the kitchen table. Same formatting, same language, different tone. Final, aggressive, designed to push. I read it once, then again. Then I flipped it over. No county filing number. No recorded reference. Nothing tying it to actual legal authority. Just pressure. Again. I set it down next to the others. The line was getting clearer now. Carol Whitmore wasn't trying to win legally. She was trying to force a reaction. A mistake. Something she could use. Lily came into the room quietly. Are we moving? She asked. The question landed heavier than anything else that week. I looked at her. Really looked this time. No, I said. She studied my face like she was checking if I believed that. You sure? I nodded. Yeah, I said. I'm sure. She didn't smile, but she nodded back. That was enough. That night, I spread everything out again. Stickers, letters, photos, chain, timeline, every piece in order, not emotional, not reactive, just facts, because that's how you win these fights. Not louder, smarter. I pulled out my phone and started documenting everything. Photos, dates, notes, every single move they made. Because if this was going where I thought it was, paper was going to matter more than anything else. And right now, they were building a case without realizing it. The question wasn't whether Carol Whitmore would push further. It was how far she thought she could go, before she crossed a line she couldn't step back from. I found that line in a county office that smelled like old paper and quiet decisions. The building sat 2 blocks off Main, the kind of place most people only walked into when something had already gone wrong. Fluorescent lights, worn counters, stacks of public records that didn't care about opinions, just facts. That's why I went. Not to argue, to verify. I walked up to the clerk window, set my ID down, and slid a note across. Property records, I said. Meadowbrook Estates, HOA. Financial filings, liens, anything tied to the association. The clerk glanced at the name, then at me. You part of the HOA? No. She nodded like that answer made more sense than the alternative. Give me a minute. She disappeared into the back. I leaned against the counter, listening to the faint shuffle of folders, the hum of an old printer kicking on somewhere behind a wall. No voices. No tension. Just process. That's the difference between noise and truth. 10 minutes later, she came back with a stack. Most recent filings are on top, she said. Anything older's archived, but this should get you started. Appreciate it. I took the stack and moved to one of the side tables. No distractions, just paper. First few pages were what I expected. Annual filings, board member listings, routine financial summaries. Clean, surface-level clean. The kind of paperwork that exists to reassure people who don't look too closely. Then I flipped further, and the tone changed. Numbers stopped lining up. Expenses without detail. Payments listed under vague categories. Consulting, property services, maintenance oversight. No contracts attached. No descriptions. Just amounts. Large ones. I kept reading. The next document hit harder. Loan agreement. Meadowbrook Estates, HOA. Borrower. Victor Hale Development Holdings. Lender. I read that line twice. Then a third time. Amount, $340,000. Purpose, infrastructure and community enhancement funding. Term, 24 months. Balloon payment due, 4 months from now. I leaned back slightly, letting that settle. HOAs don't usually operate on that kind of debt unless something's off. I flipped to the payment history. Late, deferred, missed. More than once. Then I found the clause that mattered. Default triggers acceleration of full balance. Translation? Miss enough payments. You don't owe pieces anymore. You owe everything, all at once. I kept going. Lien notice filed. 2 months ago, recorded, public, ignored, or buried. Either way, it was active. That changed everything. I sat there for a minute, staring at the numbers, because suddenly, the past few weeks made sense. The pressure, the aggression, the speed. Carol Whitmore wasn't trying to enforce rules. She was trying to control a situation that was slipping. Badly. Because if the HOA defaulted, they didn't just lose money. They lost assets, common land, facilities, control. Everything she'd built authority on. And right in the middle of that, my ranch. The one piece of land they never owned. The one thing they couldn't leverage. Unless they could force me out. I flipped back through the enforcement notices I'd brought. Dates, timeline, then cross-referenced with the loan documents. The escalation started, right after the first missed major payment. Not coincidence. Strategy. Find what you were looking for? The clerk asked, walking past. More than I expected, I said. She paused. That good or bad? Depends who you ask. I copied everything that mattered. Loan agreement, payment history, lien filing. Then I added one more document to the pile, the recorded deed to my property. Pulled it straight from their system. Stamped. Verified. Clear. Not part of the HOA. Never had been. Now I had both sides. Their weakness and my position. When I stepped back outside, the air felt different. Not calmer. Clearer. Because this wasn't about misunderstanding anymore. It was structural. They were operating on borrowed time and borrowed money. And Carol Whitmore? She was trying to fix that the only way she knew how. Control what she could. Eliminate what she couldn't. I got in the truck, set the documents on the passenger seat, and just sat there for a second. Because for the first time since the cuffs, the balance had shifted. Not publicly, not yet. But underneath everything, it had moved. Back at the ranch, I spread the new documents out on the table. Old pressure next to new truth. Letters next to loan agreements. Stickers next to lien filings. The picture wasn't complicated anymore. They needed control. Fast. And I was in the way. Lily came in quietly, watching me line everything up. "What is all that?" she asked. "Proof," I said. "Of what?" I looked at her. Of why they're pushing so hard. She stepped closer, looking at the papers like they might explain everything. "Are we still okay?" I nodded. "Yeah," I said. "Better than we were yesterday." That wasn't something I said lightly, because now I understood something I didn't before. They weren't powerful. They were exposed. And exposed people make mistakes. I gathered the documents into a new folder. Not messy. Not scattered. Organized. Because the next move wasn't reacting. It was building. Case by case. Piece by piece. Until everything lined up. Until the truth didn't just exist. It couldn't be ignored. I looked back out toward the fence line, where the last of the daylight was fading. Carol Whitmore thought she was tightening control. But what she was really doing was leaving a trail. And I was done stepping around it. Now I was going to follow it, all the way to where it broke. They didn't wait for me to get there first. The next move came fast, too fast to be coincidence. I walked out to the truck early the next morning and knew something was wrong before I even reached it. The way it leaned, the way the tire sat low against the dirt like it had given up overnight. Then I saw the rest. All 4 tires, flattened, not slow leaks, not wear, clean cuts, sharp enough that the rubber had split open like it had been peeled back. I stood there for a second, looking at it without moving. Because this wasn't pressure anymore. This was escalation. I crouched down, ran my fingers lightly along one of the cuts. Smooth edge. Deliberate. Someone had taken their time. Someone wanted me to know it wasn't random. I didn't say anything when Lily stepped out onto the porch. "What happened?" she asked. "Nothing we can't fix," I said. She didn't come closer this time, just stayed on the step, arms wrapped around herself. That was new. I stood up, pulled my phone out, and took photos. Every tire, every angle, close-ups, wide shots, documentation, always documentation. The deputy who came out later that morning didn't say much. Different guy this time. Younger, more cautious. "Hard to prove intent without a witness," he said, writing something down. "I've got cameras," I said. He looked up. "Facing the drive?" "Facing everything that matters." We walked inside, pulled up the footage. Black and white grain. Timestamp in the corner. 3:12 a.m. A figure moved into frame. Hood up, face turned away. Gloves. But the build, the height, the way they moved, I'd seen it before. The deputy watched the clip twice. "Can't confirm identity," he said, "but it's enough to file a report." "File it." He nodded, finished his notes, and handed me a copy. Case number. Official. Another piece. That should have been enough for a day. It wasn't. The call came just after lunch. "Mr. Walker?" a woman's voice said. "Yeah. This is Child Protective Services. We received a report regarding the safety of a minor residing at your property." I didn't speak for a second. "Report from who?" I asked. "I'm not authorized to disclose that," she said. "We'll need to conduct a welfare check." Of course they would. "Come out," I said. "We're here." The car pulled up 30 minutes later. Not a patrol unit this time. State vehicle. Clean. Unmarked except for the plate. The woman who stepped out looked like she'd seen too many cases like this already. Mid-30s. Professional. Tired in the way that comes from dealing with other people's messes. Emma Torres, she said, showing her badge. I just need to ask a few questions. I stepped aside. Go ahead. She walked through the house methodically. Not invasive, not aggressive, just thorough. Checked the kitchen, the fridge, the rooms. Lily stood in the hallway, watching her like she was trying to understand what she'd done wrong. You can talk to me, Emma said gently. Just want to make sure everything's okay. I stepped back. Let them talk. That's how this works. Truth doesn't need help. 40 minutes later, Emma closed her notebook. Everything here checks out, she said. No concerns, I figured. She looked at me for a second longer than necessary. This kind of report, she added quietly, usually comes from someone trying to make a situation look worse than it is. I met her eyes. Yeah, I said. I figured that too. She hesitated. Document everything, she said. If there's a pattern, it matters. Pattern, same word, different department, same conclusion. After she left, Lily didn't say anything right away. She just sat on the couch, hands in her lap. Did I do something wrong? She asked finally. That one landed deeper than the cuffs. No, I said. You didn't do anything wrong. Then why are they coming here? I didn't answer right away, because the truth wasn't simple, and she was 10. Some people, I said carefully, don't like being told no. She looked down at her hands. Are they going to take me away? No. That answer came faster, stronger, because that part wasn't negotiable. No one's taking you anywhere, I said. You understand me? She nodded, but she didn't look convinced. That night, I added everything to the table. Photos of the tires, police report, CPS visit record, timeline. Each event stacked tighter than the last, not random, not emotional, structured, deliberate. They weren't just pushing anymore. They were trying to destabilize. Financial pressure, legal pressure, personal pressure, all at once. Because if they couldn't beat me on paper, they'd try to break everything around me instead. I picked up the loan documents again. Victor Hale, $340,000, default pending, 4 months. That clock wasn't just ticking for them. It was driving everything. Carol Whitmore didn't need compliance. She needed control, fast. And the only thing standing between her and that was land she didn't own. Mine. I sat back, looking at everything laid out in front of me. The pattern wasn't just clear now. It was predictable. And predictable means beatable, because once you understand the pressure, you can choose where to apply your own. I reached for my phone, scrolled through my contacts, stopped on a name I hadn't used in a while. Daniel Price, attorney, property law. The kind of guy who didn't waste time on noise. I hit call. He picked up on the second ring. Walker, he said. Yeah. What's going on? I looked at the table, at the documents, at the pattern finally coming together. I think I've got a problem, I said. Pause. Then, I added, I've got an opportunity. He didn't respond right away. That was a good sign. Come see me, he said finally. Bring everything. I ended the call and set the phone down, because for the first time since this started, I wasn't reacting. I was moving. And if I was right, the next step wasn't defending my land. It was figuring out how to take control of the thing they were about to lose. Daniel Price's office didn't look like much from the outside. Small building. No signage beyond a brass plate by the door. Inside it was quiet. Deliberately quiet. No phones ringing. No staff moving around. Just shelves of case files and a desk that looked like it had seen more paperwork than arguments. He didn't shake my hand when I walked in. He pointed to the chair across from him. Put it down. I set the folder on his desk. Every document, every photo, every report. He didn't touch it right away. Just looked at me. You call me when you're either in trouble, he said, or when you're about to cause some. Which one is this? He opened the folder. Let's find out. He worked through it faster than I expected. Not skimming, processing. Each page got a second, sometimes two. His fingers tapped lightly against the desk in rhythm with what he was reading, like he was building something in his head while he went. Violation notices. He didn't react. Letters. Still nothing. Police report. A slight shift. CPS record. His eyes narrowed just a fraction. Then he hit the loan documents. That's where he stopped. He leaned back slightly, reading slower now. Where'd you get this? He asked. County records. He nodded once. Good. He flipped to the payment history, then to the lien, then back to the loan agreement. Okay, he said quietly. That was the first real reaction. What? I asked. He closed the folder halfway and looked at me. You're not dealing with enforcement, he said. You're dealing with a failing structure, trying to hold itself together. I figured that part. No, he said, sharper. You don't. He tapped the loan agreement. This is the center of everything. I leaned forward slightly. Explain it. He turned the document toward me. $340,000 loan. Balloon payment in 4 months. Multiple missed installments already on record. That means they're in technical default. I saw that. What you didn't say out loud, he continued, is what happens next. I didn't answer. He did. The lender calls the full amount due, immediately. No partial payments, no extensions unless they agree to it. And if they don't pay? He held my gaze. They lose everything tied to the loan. I sat back. Everything meaning what? He flipped to another page. Common assets, he said. Shared land, infrastructure, any property held under the HOA entity. I thought about that. Roads, entrances, water access, everything they use to justify control. And if that happens? I asked. He didn't hesitate. The lender takes it. The room went quiet. Not tense, focused, because now the picture was complete. Carol wasn't enforcing rules. She was trying to stop a collapse, and she was running out of time. She's pushing hard because she has to, Daniel continued. If that loan defaults publicly, the HOA loses credibility. People panic. Property values shift. Everything she's built authority on disappears. So she's trying to clean things up fast. Or remove anything that complicates it, he said. He let that sit, then added, like you. I nodded slowly. That part I already knew. Good, he said, because now we get to the part you don't. He opened the folder again and tapped the lender name. Victor Hale. You know him? I know of him. That wasn't reassuring. Private investor, Daniel continued. Quiet. Doesn't overextend. Doesn't forgive debt unless it benefits him. So he'll take the HOA apart? If they default? Absolutely. I leaned forward again. Then why hasn't he already? Daniel gave a small, almost amused exhale. Because people like Carol Whitmore usually promise they can fix it before it gets that far. And if she can't, then he stops waiting. That's when it clicked. Not fully, but enough. Where does that leave me? I asked. Daniel didn't answer immediately. He closed the folder completely this time, then folded his hands over it. You've got two options, he said. Go ahead. Option 1, he said. You keep doing what you're doing. Defend your property. Push back legally. File harassment claims, injunctions, maybe even get damages. That sounds like a fight. It is. And option 2, he didn't smile, but his tone shifted slightly. Option 2, he said. You stop fighting them. I frowned. Explain that. He leaned forward. You don't fight the HOA, he said. You go around it. How? You deal with the person who actually has power over it. He tapped the loan document again. Victor Hale. I let that sit. You want me to call the guy they owe money to? I want you to think about leverage, Daniel said. They owe him $340,000. They're already behind. They're already exposed. And he holds the paper that decides what happens next. And paper, he said, is power. I looked at the document again, then back at him. You're saying I buy the debt? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. That's not small money, I said. No, he agreed. That's everything I have. I know. And if it goes wrong, you lose it. Simple. Direct. No sugar. I sat back, letting that run through, because this wasn't defensive anymore. This was a move, a real one, the kind that doesn't get undone if you make it wrong. And if it goes right? I asked. Daniel's expression didn't change. You don't just protect your land, he said. He paused, then finished it. You control theirs. Silence. Not heavy. Clear. Because the path was there now. Risk on one side, control on the other. I stood up slowly, picked up the folder. Set the meeting, I said. Daniel watched me for a second. You sure? No, I said, then added, but I'm not waiting for her next move either. When I stepped back outside, the air felt different again. Not clearer this time, sharper, because now I wasn't reacting to pressure. I was stepping into it, on purpose. I got in the truck, started the engine, and looked out toward the road leading back to the ranch. Carol Whitmore thought she was tightening control. Thought she was pushing me toward a mistake. What she didn't know was that I'd just stopped playing her game and started looking at the one she couldn't control. The question now wasn't whether she'd escalate. It was, what happens when she realizes I'm not fighting her anymore? I'm going after the thing she can't afford to lose. She didn't realize it. Not yet. That was the advantage. The next 3 days, I didn't respond. No calls returned. No letters answered. No confrontations. Every notice she sent stayed unopened on the table for a full day before I even looked at it. Every time her SUV rolled past the fence line, I stayed inside or kept working like she wasn't there. Silence. Deliberate. Because people like Carol Whitmore don't know how to process silence. They escalate into it. The meeting with Victor Hale was set for Thursday afternoon. Neutral location. Halfway between town and the development. A small diner off the highway. Nothing fancy, nothing public enough to attract attention. Daniel handled the call. I handled everything else. Liquidating accounts wasn't complicated. It was uncomfortable. Savings first, Then the emergency reserve. Then the last piece, the one I didn't want to touch. The account I'd built after Lily was born. College fund. I stared at the number for a long time before moving it. Because once it moved, this stopped being a strategy and became a commitment. Victor Hale didn't look like someone holding a $340,000 loan over an entire neighborhood. Late 50s, plain shirt, no watch worth noticing, no flash. But his eyes, they didn't miss anything. He didn't shake my hand either, just nodded once and sat down. "You're Walker," he said. "Yeah, I've heard about you. That makes two of us." That got a small reaction. Not a smile. Something close. Daniel sat beside me, folder already open. Victor didn't look at it. "Why are you here?" he asked. "Direct." "Good." "I want the note," I said. No build-up. No positioning. Just the move. He leaned back slightly. "Everyone wants something," he said. "Few people know what they're asking for. I know exactly what I'm asking for." "Then explain it." I slid the documents forward. Loan agreement, payment history, default notice. "You're owed $340,000, I said. "They've missed payments. They're behind schedule. They're exposed." He glanced down at the papers. Didn't touch them. "I know what I'm owed." "Then you know they can't pay it." That landed. Not heavy, just acknowledged. "And you think you can?" he asked. "I think I can do something they can't." "Which is close." Silence. He studied me for a second longer, then finally reached for the documents, flipped through them. Not reading, confirming. "Why?" he asked. That was the real question. Not the money, not the structure. Motivation. "Because they're trying to force me out of land they don't own," I said. "And they're doing it using pressure that's not legal." He didn't react, so I added, "And because you don't get your money if they keep failing." That got a shift, small, but real. "What's your offer?" he asked. Daniel spoke this time. "Assignment of debt," he said. "Full transfer, immediate." Victor looked at him, then back at me. "For how much?" I didn't hesitate. 200. That was low. We both knew it. He leaned back again. "You're asking me to take a loss. I'm offering you certainty." He tapped the table once. Light. Thinking. "You're not a developer," he said. "No." "You're not an investor." "No." "Then why do you think you can handle what comes after?" Because that's what this really was. Not buying paper, owning consequences. "I don't need to handle everything," I said. "I just need to control the part that matters." He watched me for a long second, then asked, "What part is that?" I didn't look at Daniel, didn't check the documents. I answered directly. "Leverage." That was the word. The right one. He nodded once. Slow. Then sat forward. 250, he said. I didn't respond right away, because I knew what that meant. It wasn't negotiation. It was confirmation. He was willing to move. "Done," I said. Daniel didn't interrupt. Didn't question. He just started pulling paperwork. Because once you get that answer, you don't slow down. We signed everything that afternoon. Assignment documents, transfer agreements, legal confirmations. Each signature locking the move in deeper. Each page shifting power further away from the HOA and toward me. By the time we walked out of that diner, it was done. Not public, not visible, but real. And Carol Whitmore still didn't know. That night, she made her biggest move yet. I was in the garage when the lights hit. Red, blue, brighter than before, closer, louder. 3 patrol cars again, maybe more. I stepped out slowly, wiping my hands on a rag, already knowing what this was. Not confusion, not a mistake. Escalation. Ethan Walker, different deputy this time, more aggressive, hand already near his belt. Step forward. I didn't argue, didn't explain, just stepped forward. Because this wasn't about the moment anymore. It was about what came after. Carol's SUV was parked at the edge of the drive, door open. She stepped out like she'd been waiting for this, and this time, she wasn't holding a folder. She was holding confidence. "Officers," she said, voice sharp, controlled, "this man is trespassing on foreclosed property." There it was. The word again. But louder now. More certain. The deputy moved in. "Sir, turn around." I did. No resistance, no argument, hands behind my back, cuffs again, tighter this time. Lily was at the window again. I saw her. She saw me. And this time, she didn't look confused. She looked scared. The deputy pushed me forward slightly. "Ma'am, you're saying this property has been foreclosed?" Carol stepped closer. "Correct," she said. "We have documentation confirming transfer of control under HOA authority." That was the line, the one she crossed. Because this time, I knew something she didn't. The sheriff stepped in again. Cole Bennett. Same calm, same presence, but different now, because he remembered the last time. "Let me see the paperwork," he said. Carol handed it over, confident, certain, expecting the same result. He read it. Slower this time, more careful, then looked up, at her, at me, at the situation. And I stayed quiet. Didn't interrupt. Didn't defend. Didn't explain. Because this time, the outcome wasn't going to be decided in the driveway. It had already been decided, in a diner, over a signature, on a piece of paper she didn't even know existed. The only question now was how long it would take before she realized the ground she thought she controlled was already gone. Sheriff Bennett lowered the papers slowly, not like before, not quick, not uncertain, careful. That was the difference. He read every line this time, eyes moving slower, jaw tightening just enough that you had to be watching for it to notice. Carol was. I could see it. That edge in her posture, still confident, but sharper now, like she was waiting for something to confirm she was right. "Sheriff?" she asked. He didn't answer. Not yet. He flipped the page, then another. Then he stopped. "Ma'am," he said finally, voice even. "These documents don't establish a completed foreclosure." Carol didn't hesitate. "They establish authority to enforce." "They establish intent," he corrected, "not completion." That landed, small, but enough. The deputy behind me shifted slightly, grip loosening just a fraction. Carol stepped closer, heels crunching on the gravel. "With respect, Sheriff, our legal counsel reviewed." "I'm not questioning your counsel," Bennett said. "I'm questioning whether this property has legally transferred ownership." Silence. Real silence this time. Not tension. Uncertainty. I didn't speak. Didn't move. Didn't defend. Because this wasn't my moment. This was hers breaking. The foreclosure process is ongoing, she said, adjusting quickly, which gives us enforcement authority over the property until resolution. No, Bennett said. One word. Flat. Final. He handed the papers back. That's not how foreclosure works, he continued. You don't gain possession before the process is complete, especially not on property that wasn't part of the HOA to begin with. There it was. Everything in one line. Carol's smile didn't come back this time. It held. Barely. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. Bennett didn't respond. Instead, he turned to the deputy. Remove the cuffs. The metal came off faster than before. Cleaner. No hesitation. Just procedure correcting itself. I rolled my wrists once, slow, feeling the circulation come back. Didn't look at her. Didn't need to. Mr. Walker, Bennett said, based on what I'm seeing, there's no grounds for removal or trespass enforcement at this time. I understand. You're free to remain on your property. I was planning on it. That got a small reaction from the deputy, not from Carol. She stepped forward again, closer now than before. You think this is over? She said. Still controlled, but tighter, more personal. I finally looked at her. Really looked. Not at the performance, at the calculation behind it. No, I said. I don't. That wasn't what she expected. She paused. Just for a second. Then recovered. We'll be pursuing this through proper channels, she said, louder now, more for the officers than for me. This property will be brought into compliance. Bennett nodded once. You're welcome to pursue civil action, he said. But tonight, there's nothing here for us. That was it. The line drawn. Official. Documented. Witnessed. The patrol cars didn't leave immediately. They took their time this round. Not out of uncertainty. Out of procedure. Verifying. Resetting. Making sure the same mistake didn't happen twice. Carol stood by her SUV, arms crossed, watching everything. Not saying anything now, because there wasn't anything left to say that would land. I stayed where I was, hands free, breathing steady, because the shift had already happened. Not loud, not visible to everyone, but real. When the last set of lights shut off and the engines faded down the road, the silence came back heavier than before. Different kind. Not empty. Settled. Carol didn't leave right away. She walked halfway up the drive again, stopped just outside the porch light. You're playing a dangerous game, she said. I leaned against the post, calm. So are you. She studied me. Longer this time. Searching for something. Weakness. Reaction. Anything she could use. She didn't find it. You think because you found a few documents you understand what's happening? She said. I didn't answer. She stepped closer. You don't, she added. You're not equipped for this. You don't have the resources. You don't have the backing. That was the first honest thing she'd said all night. From her perspective, she was right. I pushed off the post slightly. Maybe, I said. No denial, no argument, just enough. That unsettled her more than anything else I could have said. Because people like her, they expect resistance, not agreement. She exhaled once, sharp. This ends one way, she said, and it's not with you standing here. Then she turned, walked back to the SUV. Door shut. Engine started. And just like that, she was gone again. I stood there a few seconds longer, listening to the quiet settle, Then I walked inside. Lily was still in the hallway. Didn't run to me this time. Just stood there. Waiting. "They left?" she asked. "Yeah. Are you okay?" I nodded. "Yeah." She stepped closer. "Are they coming back?" I looked down at her. Thought about the question. Didn't rush the answer. "Not the same way," I said. That was the truth. Because something had changed tonight. Not publicly. Not completely. But enough. I walked back into the kitchen. The table was still covered in documents. Old ones. New ones. Now something else sat on top. A realization. Carol Whitmore had just escalated to her highest move. Police. Public authority. False foreclosure claim. And it didn't land. Which meant she was out of leverage, she understood. But I wasn't. I picked up the loan assignment documents. Ran my thumb along the edge. Because the real move hadn't been used yet. Not publicly. Not visibly. Not where she could see it coming. And that was the point. The quieter I got, the more space she gave me, the more she pushed, the more mistakes she made. I turned off the kitchen light and looked out through the window at the dark fence line. Same land, same boundary, same ownership. But now different control. The next step wasn't reacting to her escalation. It was letting her walk straight into something she didn't know existed. Because the truth wasn't something I had to prove in a driveway. It was something that I was going to prove in front of everyone. And when that happened, there wouldn't be any confusion left. Only consequences. They didn't come all at once. They built, quietly, predictably. The first sign was the meeting notice, printed, hand-delivered, slipped into every mailbox in Meadowbrook Estates. Emergency HOA assembly. Financial action required. No details. Just urgency. Carol's style. Control the room first. Explain later. I didn't go. Didn't need to. By then, I already knew what she was going to do. Special assessment. Emergency funding. Push the homeowners to cover the debt before it surfaced publicly. Desperation disguised as leadership. Daniel called me that night. "She's trying to raise the money," he said. "How much?" "Enough to stall default. Maybe delay foreclosure." "Will it work?" Pause. "No," he said. "Not in time." That was the key. Time. Because while she was trying to patch the problem, the clock was already running, and she still didn't know who controlled it. The notice for the foreclosure sale was public by Friday, posted at the courthouse, filed clean, legal, final. Meadowbrook Estates HOA, asset liquidation, date, time, location, no mention of me, no mention of Carol, just process. That's how power works when it's real. It doesn't argue. It executes. The morning of the sale came fast, faster than it should have. I parked 2 blocks away. Didn't want attention. Didn't want positioning. Just wanted to walk in clean. The courthouse steps were already crowded. More than I expected. Homeowners, media, curious onlookers, people who didn't understand what they were about to watch, but knew it mattered. Carol stood near the front, perfectly dressed, composed, talking to a small group like she still owned the situation. She hadn't seen me yet. Daniel met me halfway up the steps. "Everything's in order," he said quietly. "Paperwork's clean. Assignment recorded. You're recognized as lien holder." I nodded. "Any surprises?" "Only if she finds a way to stop the process." "Can she?" He shook his head. "Not today." That was enough. The commissioner stepped forward at exactly 10. No delay, no ceremony, just a clipboard and a voice that had done this too many times to make it dramatic. This is the foreclosure sale of assets held by Meadowbrook Estates Homeowners Association. Legal description, parcel breakdown, common areas, infrastructure. Everything tied to the HOA entity. Everything Carol had been using as leverage. Then came the number. Opening bid, $340,000. Silence. Not long, but enough. Carol stepped forward. I object, she said. Clear, controlled. The commissioner didn't look up. Objections are handled in court, ma'am. Not here. I represent the association. You represent a defaulting entity, he said. This sale proceeds. That was it. Her authority ended at the edge of the process. I stepped forward. Not rushed, not aggressive, just enough. 340,000, I said. The commissioner nodded once. Bid recognized. Carol turned. Finally saw me. Really saw me. Not as a problem. Not as resistance. As something else. You don't have that kind of money, she said. Quiet, but sharp. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. The commissioner continued. Any competing bids? Silence again. This time heavier. Because nobody else in that crowd had reason to step in. No one understood the structure. No one had the leverage. Going once. Carol stepped forward again. This is illegitimate, she said. He has no standing. The commissioner didn't stop. Going twice. She turned to the crowd. Do you understand what he's doing? She said, louder now. He's taking your property, your community. Everything. Murmurs. Uncertainty. Fear. Exactly what she wanted. But fear doesn't stop process. Final call. I didn't move, didn't react, didn't push. Because I didn't need to. The gavel came down. Sharp. Clean. Sold. That was it. No explosion. No argument. Just a sound. And a shift. Carol stared at me. Not speaking. Not reacting. Just processing. Because in that moment, everything she thought she controlled moved. Daniel handed me the confirmation documents. Signed. Stamped. Final. Congratulations, he said quietly. I looked at the paper, then back at her. I didn't take anything, I said. Not loud, not for the crowd, just for her. I bought what you couldn't hold. That landed, harder than anything else, because it wasn't emotional, it was factual. She stepped closer, close enough now that no one else could hear. You think this ends here? She said. I shook my head once. No, I said. I think this is where it starts. She didn't answer, didn't argue, didn't threaten. Because for the first time, she didn't have the position to do it from. The crowd started to shift, people talking, trying to understand what just happened, media stepping in, questions forming. I stepped back, didn't engage, didn't explain. Not yet. Because the real move wasn't winning the auction. It was what came next. I looked down at the document in my hand, then back at the land in the distance, the roads, the entrances, the infrastructure she built her authority on, all of it tied to one thing now. And that thing wasn't her anymore. The shift didn't hit the crowd all at once. It moved through them slowly, like people realizing they'd been standing on something unstable, and it just got replaced under their feet. What does this mean? Someone asked. Not to me. To anyone. To the air. Carol didn't answer. She couldn't. Because for the first time since this started, she didn't have control of the narrative. Daniel stepped in just enough to keep things clean. Mr. Walker now holds the controlling lien position over HOA assets, he said, voice steady, professional. All further decisions regarding those assets will proceed through proper legal channels. That calmed some people, confused others, and exposed one thing clearly. This wasn't chaos. It was structure. Carol finally spoke again. Louder this time. This is not over, she said. The board will challenge this. We will file injunctions. You can try, Daniel said, cutting in. But the sale is valid. The debt was real. The default was documented. The transfer was legal. She turned on him. You facilitated this. I enforced it, he corrected. That was the last time she tried to sound in control. After that, everything she said sounded like reaction. The media started closing in. Microphones, questions. Mr. Walker, did you plan this? Are you taking ownership of the entire community? Is this retaliation against the HOA? I didn't answer right away. Didn't rush. Because this moment wasn't about winning. It was about defining what came next. I didn't take anything, I said finally. I stepped into something that was already collapsing. That slowed them down. Focused the attention. The HOA was in default, I continued. That's public record. The debt wasn't being paid. The structure wasn't sustainable. I held the document up slightly. Now it is. That created a different kind of silence. Not confusion. Consideration. Carol laughed. Short. Sharp. You think you're going to run this? She said. You think people are just going to follow you? I looked at her, calm. No, I said. I think people are done being controlled. That landed harder than anything else that morning, because it wasn't about me. It was about them. I stepped forward just enough for the crowd to hear. Effective immediately, I said. There are no HOA enforcement actions. Murmurs. Real ones now. No fines, I continued. No compliance notices. No penalties based on standards that weren't legally applied in the first place. Someone in the crowd spoke up. What about the fees? I nodded. Gone. That changed everything. You could feel it. The shift from fear to possibility. Carol stepped forward again. Desperate now. You can't just dissolve an HOA, she said. I'm not dissolving it, I said. I'm restructuring it. I turned slightly, addressing the crowd now. Voluntary association, I said. No enforcement authority. No mandatory fees. Community decisions made by people who actually live here, not by pressure or paperwork. Silence. Then movement. Heads turning, people talking, because for the first time, they had a choice. You're going to destroy property values, Carol said. No, I replied. I'm removing artificial pressure. Daniel stepped in again. All legal transitions will follow proper filing, he added. Nothing changes overnight. But enforcement as it existed before is no longer valid. Carol looked around, at the crowd, at the cameras, at the people she used to lead. And for the first time, no one stepped toward her. That was the moment. Not the gavel, not the paperwork. This. When authority disappears, and nobody reaches for it. She didn't say anything else. Just turned. Walked back down the steps. And this time, no one followed. The crowd stayed. Questions shifted. Tone changed. less fear, more curiosity. I didn't stay long. Didn't need to. Because the move was done. The rest was just execution. Back at the ranch, the air felt different. Not quieter, clearer. Lily ran out to meet me before I even shut the truck off. "Did you win?" she asked. I looked at her, thought about the question, then nodded. "Yeah," I said. "I think we did." She smiled. Not big, not loud, just enough. That afternoon, we walked the fence line together. Same ground, same boundary, but now no pressure hanging over it. "Are they going to leave us alone now?" she asked. I looked out across the land, toward the roads, toward the development in the distance. "They don't get to decide that anymore," I said. She nodded like that made sense, because in a simple way, it did. Over the next few weeks, the structure changed. Paperwork filed, board dissolved, new association formed. Voluntary, transparent, no enforcement power, just coordination. Some people resisted, most didn't. Because once control disappears, people don't rush to rebuild it the same way. Carol tried. Legal filings, complaints, threats, none of them stuck. Because now, everything ran through process, not pressure. Eventually, she stopped showing up. I didn't see her leave, didn't hear where she went, just noticed one day. She wasn't part of the picture anymore. The ranch stayed the same. Fence still held, gate still opened, land still mine. But something else changed. Not ownership, not control, perspective. Lily planted flowers along the fence again. Same spot, same dirt. Different feeling. No one came to tell her it wasn't allowed. That was the real win. Not the documents, not the auction, not the shift in power. It was that moment, quiet, simple, uncontested. I stood there watching her work the soil with her hands, dirt under her nails, sunlight catching in her hair. And I realized, this was never about beating Carol Whitmore. It was about making sure someone like her couldn't decide what happened here again. "They thought power came from rules," I said quietly. Lily looked up. "What?" I shook my head. "Nothing," I said. Then added, "Just something I figured out. Because in the end, power didn't come from control. It came from knowing exactly what was yours and having the patience to prove it."
That's the lesson I walked away with. Not everything that looks official is right, and not every fight is meant to be loud. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to stay steady, gather your friends, and let the church do its work. I didn't win because I pushed harder. I won because I understood the situation, trust the process, and didn't let pressure force me into the wrong move. Out here, land means something. It's not just property, it's history and place where your family feels safe. And when that gets challenges, you don't always need to raise your voice. You just need to stand your ground long enough for the trust to catch up. Now, I'm curious, have you ever deal with an HOA or someone trying to overstep like this? If you have, drop a yes in the comment or share your story. I read more of them than you think. And if you appreciate story about standing firm, using the law in the right way, and keeping your dignity door is on, go ahead and surprise. There are more coming, and some of them might hit closer to home than you expect.